Frank Vignone, President and CEO of Old Salem Museums and Gardens and the Museum of Early Southern Decorative Arts.
Hi, I'm Michelle Cook. I'm the Senior Director of Development at Old Salem.
One of the interesting things that's occurred since the COVID-19 pandemic began is that MESDA and Old Salem, our leadership team, really moved into a much more collaborative effort. And because of that collaboration, we've got 20 leadership members in this team. One of the benefits is that we're able to move very quickly. And one of the things we realized right away was that we may not be open to the public in a traditionally, historically interpreted way, but we could certainly ask what the community needed and address those needs. And so for us, that's been a really powerful movement because it has taken us out of ourselves, out of our organizational culture a bit, and really asked us to look outside of ourselves what we could do for others. And a good part of that has been the transformation of the gardens into victory gardens to produce vegetables for local food banks, and really pivoting our bakery into being able to bake bread for families in need. So those are just two examples of the kind of amazing collaborative effort that is resulting in these pretty strong community engagements.
I agree. We're open, but we're just different. And that we were able to so quickly pivot to baking bread, for example. I think we've baked some 250 loaves
every week. Yeah.
Since we closed in mid-March. Almost 2,000 pounds of vegetables having been donated to local food banks. But the big thing for me, the most exciting thing for me, is what we've been able to do to support teachers and students and parents who are teaching and learning from home. That we were able to take our learning in place programs and quickly pivot to Exploratorium.
Yeah.
We
had our first one up the day we closed.
The day we closed, so that when schools closed the following week, teachers had a resource that was right there and available for them. And the other thing is that we had already been having these conversations, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's one of the reasons why we were able to quickly sort of change the focus of what we were doing.
What's interesting is we somewhat anticipated what was coming. So really in mid-February, we started having meetings and we insisted that the entire leadership team go on what is our online meeting, which is Teams, Microsoft Teams. So our first complete Microsoft Teams meeting actually occurred before we closed. So we were already prepared. It really wasn't a crisis at the level of communication.
Right. It did not become a crisis for us. And the other thing is that we are always talking to our partners. So whether it's our donors or the teachers that we're engaging in the classroom or our foundation partners, our corporate partners, we're talking to them all the time about what's important in this community, and how can we together meet the needs of our growing community.
One of the things that we did that I think is really particularly unique to Old Salem because of our collaborative effort, we have 20 people in the leadership team. So each one of us brought a different perspective, a different community-based idea about what we should be doing. So over really a 2-week period when we were looking at operational projections, what were different ideas for Old Salem, we were able to take in a lot of different ideas because each of us has a different place in the community.
Too. Yeah. It was an exciting experience for me. I don't know, Frank, I don't know if you could tell, but when we first started talking about COVID is coming, it's going to be really bad, how do we get ourselves prepared? I was like, yeah. Doing all the things we needed to do to get ready.
Yeah.
But I think that was the other thing that gave us a leg up.
Yeah.
That we were serious, all of us were going really, but we were preparing nonetheless.
Yeah. It was important for us as a precursor to being closed, to being validated that our actual management and operations procedures could continue, even though the site was closed.
And we were doing that in partnership with our board.
Yeah.
And that's the other big thing. So when a lot of organizations closed, they hadn't had those conversations with their governance teams. So they had to stop talk to them, get them up to speed. Well, Frank, we were making sure that from the first conversation that we were talking to the board.
Well, that was also another thing really that the leadership team wanted, and that was that the president's office have regular video updates for not only the staff,
Yep.
the leadership team, the public, but also our board of trustees.
Mm-hmm.
And so from the very beginning, that's been part of my job. A task that was given to me was to produce these updates.
Most exciting was the one that we did for our funders about 10 days ago, and the response has been phenomenal. So Frank's job was to be in front of the camera and talk to them. My job was to take what he was talking about and translate it into some workable bullet points. So they got paper, they got the numbers to go along with it, but what they also got was the passion, the enthusiasm, and the gratitude of our team through our president.
The communications effort that we've been doing actually has had a big impact nationally. And that's because we've started to hear, as soon as we started to do the videos, I started to hear from social media that Old Salem was one of the few nonprofits that was being so transparent about its operational projections, the PPP loan money, what we were doing in terms of programming and digitizing our collections with History Nerd Alerts and the Victory Gardens and the baking of bread and the exploratoriums.
Absolutely.
All of this was out there from the very beginning. So interesting, I think, at a national level that Old Salem will be highlighted in a magazine article. It's a National Museum magazine about our COVID responses.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of surprised by that because we're just doing what we needed to be doing,
Yep.
but other people were really taking notice. I mean, we were really just doing what we thought we needed to do.
Yeah.
And it, I think that other nonprofits saw how transparent we were becoming,
Mm-hmm.
and I think there are others that have said it's okay to be honest that, we're all going through this together.
Yeah, it wasn't just in the museum world, in the living history world.
Yeah.
Our colleagues, those of us on the development team, we were hearing from our development colleagues, what are you guys doing over there? How are you able to tell these stories and get these grants out so quickly and communicate with your funders, with your partners? It's because it's what we always do, but it's also because we have a great story to tell.
Yeah, but don't you feel like you're working harder now than you ever were?
Yes, yes, and yes.
It's absolutely
yes.
true.
This work at home thing is really quite interesting. You get up in the morning and it's grab a cup of coffee and go to the computer.
It's true.
And it's after dinner. Well, let me just go and see if I can do one more thing before the day is over. And you look and it's dark outside. But that's because we're excited about what we are able to do.
One of the things that it's been difficult to really judge nationally is how other organizations were putting some structure to the COVID-19 pandemic. And then when you throw in the middle of that the Black Lives Matter movement and the activity and real questions and kind of self-reflection that we as an organization were doing, again, I think that it was appreciated how transparent we were, not only with the COVID-19 response, but also our reflection
Mm-hmm.
on the Black Lives Matter movement and how Old Salem can not only support it, but really look internally and try to make sure that its policies and procedures and hiring and all of that really has a very strong, equitable quality to them. And that's been, those two things happening at the same time has been pretty substantial.
It's been substantial and it's been rewarding. So this again was not new for us. We've been talking about social justice as a leadership team and as an organization. So it wasn't hard. The hard part of Black Lives Matter was that it was just so emotional to the core for all of us. But it's what we do. Our commitment to telling the stories of the early Moravian church and the enslaved in Old Salem is what we do. So we want to continue to do that. I mean, as we think about, I think about our commitment to Title I schools in our community. And we have the opportunity to take a great product, a great story, and make it accessible broadly. not because of the times that
Yeah.
we're living in, but because that's our commitment.
Well,
Organizationally.
that's a really good point, because the work that we started really in the mid '90s with St. Philip's African American Church, but also in 2016 starting the Hidden Town Project. In 2017 we started the Equity Initiative.
Yep.
The list goes on and on. I think a lot of people took notice that we had already been doing this work, and what we've been doing is just highlighting it in a way that is very current.
Yeah.
And people have appreciated that. In fact, I think one social media comment said that we have really stepped up our game in educating everyone about the enslaved at Old Salem. And that made me feel really good, because it meant that they were starting to pay attention to what we had already been talking about. But the way we're communicating it probably shifted into a new level.
Yeah. When that's your foundation,
Yeah.
it's so easy. It's just easy to do. So you may be watching and wondering how you can support the work that we're doing at Old Salem. I will tell you, what's most important for us is the financial support that you provide. Every program that we have launched and have tweaked and have made available digitally costs money. And right now we need your help. So a gift to Old Salem, it can be directed to one of our programs. If you're interested, for example, in learning in place, or supporting our victory gardens, or supporting our bread baking, you can do that. I invite you to go online to www.oldsalem.org. Donate now, where you can make your gift. It's not the size of the gift that matters, it's that you have helped us to continue to support our community through our important initiatives. Would you agree with that, Frank?
Absolutely. And one thing that I'd like to do is, when the COVID-19 pandemic started, the first thing we looked at was what were our conjectural budgets at the end of the year. And I want to tell you in a really very straightforward way that our numbers were topping $3 million. If we continued our operations in the way that we were doing prior to the pandemic, we would have a deficit of around $3.2 million. Now, of course, we cut our expenses and we brought that down. But one thing that we refused to do was hibernate and just kind of stay quiet until all this blew over. In fact, that's why we transformed our gardens for the food banks. That's why we're baking fresh bread for families. But please understand, every time we do those things, it's costing us money. Now, we're committed to continuing those, but the way that we can continue those is if we get community support to do so. So it's not just the traditional Old Salem that we need contributions for. The historic district is closed right now, but it's the funding of the bakery and the victory gardens and the exploratoriums and the history nerd alerts.
Study South.
Yes.
Salem Presents.
That's what will get us through this year. And it's not a self-serving thing. In fact, our operations are really kind of looking outward. And that's where we need help. That's where we need you to help us be better community engagement professionals.